Hey yo, what is up guys? Today we're doing something totally different. We're playing a Roblox game and we're also listening to his story, so yeah, let's do it.
To school on Monday because he just really loved watermelon. But the principal immediately stopped him and yelled, "What do you plan on doing with this?" My friend said, "Nothing, I just like watermelon." And the principal didn't believe him and made him throw them away. That's when we realized something. Ever since our principal banned senior pranks and said we'd all fail if anyone tried one, he'd been so paranoid that he'd confiscate anything that looked suspicious, even if we did nothing with it. By Tuesday, word had spread, and every senior brought a watermelon. 300 watermelons flooding the hallways. The principal was sprinting between classrooms, and by noon, he made an announcement that all watermelons had to be thrown away immediately. We did. Then Wednesday, we switched it up. We brought buckets, and the principal completely lost it. He was storming through the hallways, grabbing buckets out of people's hands, yelling, "I said no senior pranks." But Friday was the trap. It was 95 degrees outside, and we knew he couldn't resist. Every senior walked in carrying a gallon jug of water. The principal's voice came over the intercom, absolutely furious, saying all water would be confiscated immediately. At lunch, teachers went table to table taking every jug. Phones came out immediately. Everyone posted that our principal was denying us water in 95-degree heat and tagged news stations. Before final bell, 4 news vans pulled up outside. I watched the principal get dragged outside by the reporters as they questioned him. "Why are you denying water in this heat? Are you trying to kill them?" He tried explaining, but it looked so bad that he had to resign on the spot. My son's teacher called him the most disrespectful student she'd ever had. My son is autistic. You can't tell by looking at him, but the moment he opens his mouth, you know something's different. He takes everything literally, says exactly what's on his mind, doesn't understand the invisible social rules everyone else follows. At home, it's fine, but my wife wanted to send him to public school. He's 12 now. He can't stay in our bubble forever, so we enrolled him. On the first day, I tried to explain to his teacher that he was a different kind of special, the kind who can't pick up on social cues. She smiled politely and said every kid is special. She had no idea what was coming. The first 3 weeks went better than I expected. He came home talking about new friends and clubs he wanted to join. Maybe my wife was right. Then I got the call. "Your son has been removed from class. He's serving detention. We need you here immediately." I found his teacher was already waiting with a tight smile. "I've never had a student this disrespectful," she said, her voice calm and measured. "We've been trying to tolerate him, but he argues with teachers and humiliates other students." My hands went cold. What did he do? Last Monday, during a history lecture, he stood up and started arguing with Mr. Bouillard in front of the whole class. My son spoke up from his chair. "I didn't argue with him. He was just wrong. He said Christopher Columbus discovered America. But Columbus never set foot on American soil. He landed in the Caribbean and Central America. If Mr. Bouillard had read the primary sources, he would know this." The teacher's smile didn't waver. "See, this is exactly what I mean. And it doesn't stop there. Yesterday, I overheard him tell a female classmate that her hairstyle was unusual. She was humiliated." "No," my son said calmly. "I said it was different, and that I liked it. I'd never seen braids like that before in person." The teacher tilted her head like she was dealing with a child having a tantrum. "And today, he said something incredibly rude to me directly." My chest tightened. What was it? I asked him, "What would your parents say if I called them?" And he said, "Hello," like it was some kind of joke. I stared at her, then at my son, then back at her. Then I started laughing. The teacher's smile finally cracked. "Ma'am, he's not joking. He takes everything literally. You asked what we would say if you called. The answer is hello. That's what you say when you answer the phone." I pulled out my phone and showed her the diagnosis, the therapy records, the doctor's notes. She glanced at the screen for half a second. "Well, if that's true, you should have informed me properly. I've already recommended him for immediate expulsion." My heart sank. 3 weeks. That's all it took. That's when a group of kids appeared in the doorway. The girl with the braids was at the front. "You can't do that. He's a good person." The teacher moved toward them, but more kids crowded in. "He's weird, yeah," one boy said. "But he's not mean, and he's definitely not rude." Another kid jumped in. "He says stuff that sounds off sometimes, but he's the smartest kid in class. And he's actually funny, like unintentionally hilarious." By the time the principal arrived, he'd heard enough. He overruled the expulsion on the spot. I had to look away for a second. My son was surrounded by 12-year-olds who understood him better than most adults ever would. He looked back at me with that same blank expression. "Dad, can we go home now? This has been statistically the most inefficient use of a school day." I laughed and put my arm around him. The girl with the braids waved goodbye. He waved back. "I like your braids," he said again. She grinned. "I know. You told me yesterday, and the day before that." When my daughter rushed out to catch the bus in the morning, she accidentally left her iPad on the couch. But the second I saw it, she had ChatGPT open. Why would a 9-year-old be using AI? But then I read what it said on the screen. The app replied, "I can't provide detailed instructions on how to make a bomb." I couldn't believe what I was seeing and instantly started scrolling. She was actually typing this. "How do I make a bomb that everyone at school will love? How can I sneak a bomb to school?" I felt like I couldn't breathe. I thought her backpack did feel heavy this morning, so I ran to her room and threw open the door. She had baking soda, citric acid, and I was horrified. I called her school. Hello? Have you seen my daughter? Has she been acting strange today? She could hear the panic in my voice. Well, actually, yes. She kept talking about having something big to show all of her friends today. She brought her backpack outside and wouldn't let anyone touch it. Said she had a surprise for them. But the second I told her about what I saw, she gasped. Oh my God, our school got an anonymous threat a month ago. She started calling the police, and I knew I had to get there fast. I bolted to my car, but the second I pulled into the parking lot, there were police cars, SWAT cars, and I saw them in the playground surrounding my daughter. She was holding her backpack with all her friends around, all of them crying because they were so scared. They yelled, "Drop the bag and step away," and when I tried to get closer, she finally saw me. She screamed, "Daddy," and tried to run to me, but an officer grabbed her arm. "Sir, stay back. That's my daughter. She's 9 years old." They slammed me to the ground. "No, please. She's just a kid." But when I looked back up, they were grabbing her. The officer grabbed the backpack and looked terrified as started unzipping it. All of the police officers ducked, ready to see him explode. But when he opened it, a bunch of glitter fell out. "Wait, what? Honey, did you put a bomb in your bag?" "Yeah, I spent all night making it." And when I looked back, it hit me. She meant bath bombs. My friends laughed at my rust bucket collection until two of them got their BMWs repossessed. We were all 22, fresh out of college, financing German cars we couldn't really afford. I was about to do the same thing, had the loan approved for a brand new luxury sedan. But my uncle pulled me aside at a family barbecue and walked me over to his garage. He pulled a tarp off a beat-up muscle car covered in dust. That pile of rust cost me $2,000 in 1995. Sold it last month for $140,000. Your fancy new car will be worth half what you paid the second you drive it off the lot. These old beauties only go up. I canceled my loan and spent the money on 3 rusted-out classics from the 60s. A Camaro that wouldn't start, a Corvette with a blown engine, and a Chevelle that looked like it had been sitting in a field for decades. My parents were mortified when neighbors complained about the junkyard in our driveway. My friends were worse. "Bro, you're never getting a girl driving those rust buckets," one of them said while showing off his new leather seats. "Unless you're into cougars who remember when these things were new." Another one laughed and said, "I looked like I was collecting scrap metal instead of building a future." Every time we hung out, they'd brag about their heated seats and backup cameras, while I pulled up in something that barely started. There were nights I sat in that Camaro that wouldn't start and just stared at the steering wheel wondering if my uncle was wrong. But then I'd remember that $140,000 sale and keep grinding. For 4 years, I spent nights and weekends in my uncle's garage, learning to weld, rebuild engines, and match factory paint. Burned through 6 shirts learning to weld right. Rebuilt my first engine 3 times before it actually ran. Sliced my hands open more times than I could count. My social life disappeared because everyone thought I was too broke to hang out with, while my friends posted pictures of their leather interiors and complained about $1,400 monthly payments. I was covered in oil trying to bring these rust buckets back to life. Then I started recognizing what collectors actually wanted. My Camaro had the rare big block option. The Corvette had the split rear window that people paid crazy money for. The Chevelle still had the original factory papers that most owners had lost decades ago, and the market was about to explode. Auction prices went insane, and collectors started calling me directly. I sold that first Camaro for 30 times what I paid and used the money to buy a dozen more. Restored them, flipped 3 for enough to open my own warehouse. Last month, my phone rang. It was one of the guys who used to roast me hardest. "Hey man, you still in the car business? I got laid off and the bank took my BMW. You know anyone hiring?" A week later, same call from another one. Meanwhile, I was sitting on 26 muscle cars worth more than everything they'd ever owned combined. I drove my restored Camaro to our old hangout spot last weekend. Same friend who said I'd never get a girl driving rust buckets walked over. His jaw actually dropped. He ran his hand along the hood like he was afraid to touch it. "That thing's beautiful. What would you sell it for?" My wife leaned over from the passenger seat. "Don't bother. He's not selling that one." He looked at her, then back at me. Didn't say a word. Same rust bucket that was never going to get me a girl. Funny how that worked out. I was working the night shift just driving around when a car sped past me way above the limit. I instantly flicked my lights on, chasing after him. He was swerving everywhere, and I knew for sure he had to be drunk. "Pull over right now." After a few minutes, he finally slowed down and pulled over. While I was radioing the traffic stop in, I ran his license plate and saw he had been arrested over 10 times for drinking and driving. I was about to get out, but just before I did, I watched this guy turn his car off and throw his keys into the woods. But it got even weirder. He then pulled out a lawn chair, set it up, and cracked open a beer, chugging it right there. I got out and walked up, trying to process what I was seeing. I asked him what he was doing, and he smiled and said, "Just enjoying the evening, officer." Then it hit me. He knew exactly what he was doing. He turned the car off, threw his keys away, and made sure I saw him drink after he was outside the vehicle. There was no way for me to prove he was actually drunk while he was driving. And since he was drinking now, there was no way he could be operating a vehicle. Apparently, this guy had been arrested for drunk driving so much, he became an expert on the laws and knew exactly how to exploit them. He outsmarted me, and he knew it. The night I robbed my father was the night I stopped hating him. My dad kept a metal chest in the corner of our garage that nobody was allowed to touch. It sat there for years, covered in cobwebs, with faded red letters that said, "Do not open." When I was 8 and my brother Joel was 6, we got caught just standing near it, not touching it, just looking. Dad's face turned purple. He grabbed the thickest belt from the wall and locked us in the garage for 20 minutes. After that, we stayed far away from the chest, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. What was so important that he'd beat us just for looking? The garage was where Dad kept his tools hanging on the wall like a display. Leather belts arranged by thickness, extension cords wrapped in perfect coils, a wooden paddle below a B on our report cards. It meant an hour in the garage. If we talked back, the tools came out. And just to make sure we really learned our lesson, he'd spray cleaning solution on the wounds so they'd burn and sizzle while we screamed. Mom would turn up the TV and pretend nothing was happening. One night, Joel spilled juice on Dad's work papers by accident. I watched Dad's eyes go dark as he stood up from the table. Garage. Now, that session was different. Dad used everything on the wall. He told Joel he was going to beat the ADHD out of him. Joel passed out twice, and Dad dumped cold water on him to wake him up so he could keep going. I stood outside the door listening to my little brother beg for mercy while Mom vacuumed the living room. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I couldn't make myself move. Something inside me broke that night. I got a job at the grocery store and hid money in a sock under my mattress. I researched bus routes and cities where 2 teenage boys could disappear, but I needed more money than minimum wage could give me. That's when I started thinking about the chest again. The opportunity came 6 months later when Dad left for a weekend hunting trip. I shook Joel awake at midnight. "We're leaving tonight." We crept down to the garage with flashlights, and my hands were trembling as I pulled the tarp off the chest. I found a crowbar on the wall and wedged it under the lock. It took 3 tries before the metal snapped. Inside was nothing like I'd imagined. Stacks of $100 bills wrapped in rubber bands. Underneath the money was a black handgun and a box of bullets. And at the very bottom, photographs. I held one up to my flashlight and my stomach lurched. It was Dad as a kid, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with bruises covering his arms and face. Standing behind him was a man who looked like an older, meaner version of my father, his father. I grabbed all the money and stuffed it in my backpack. Joel reached for the gun, but I slapped his hand away. "We're not like him. We left the gun exactly where we found it." 3 months later, my aunt tracked us down at the motel where we'd been staying. "He's gone." I gripped the phone harder. "What do you mean gone?" "He went into the garage 3 nights ago and didn't come out. Your mom heard screaming for hours. Then one loud bang. My legs gave out, and I sat down hard on the motel bed. He left a note," she said. 5 words. I failed. I couldn't break the cycle. I didn't cry because I missed him. I cried because I finally understood him. He kept those photos his whole life. Evidence of what his father did to him. He knew exactly what he was doing to us, and he couldn't stop himself. The chest wasn't a secret. It was a confession he couldn't make out loud. Joel and I never touched a belt, never raised our voice, never lifted a hand. The cycle broke with us. When 2 guys in our class got in a fist fight over Clash Royale, our teacher decided to give everyone assigned seating. I got stuck next to the quiet kid, and on the first day, he put a note on my desk. I opened it and read, "Enjoy your last few minutes alive, loser." I just looked at him weird, and he was just sitting there smiling at me. I tried to ignore it. Then another paper hit my desk. It just said, "Look." And when I did, he was unzipping his backpack. He opened it all the way and reached inside. And when he showed me what he had, I felt my heart start racing. He was holding an actual gun. I instantly started sweating. Nobody had a clue this was going on. And after a few seconds, I could hear him writing another note. It said, "If you scream, I'm shooting you." My sweat started off my forehead. If I screamed and warned everyone, he'd for sure shoot me. But if I ran, I'd be leaving my classmates for dead. I felt like I wanted to cry, and all of a sudden I was getting looks from the people around me. I had to do something, and then it hit me. I could ask to go to the bathroom. I could just walk out calmly, get to the principal's office, and tell them to lock down the school. I took a deep breath and raised my hand. "Ms. Wheeler, can I use the bathroom?" She barely looked up. "No, you can wait. Class is almost over." Oh my God, I literally could not wait. "No, but I really have to go." She just sighed. "Fine. Just make it quick." I stood up trying to keep my legs from shaking. But before I could open the door, I heard his voice behind me. "Ms. Wheeler, I really have to go too. May I go as well?" She just shrugged and said, "Okay, make it quick." I walked out, my heart beating out of my chest. I turned around and saw him walking right behind me. I was panicking. I saw the bathroom. I thought maybe I could go in and grab him. Maybe this was a prank. But as I passed the door, I started running. I ran down the hall and had to make it to the principal's office. So as soon as I turned the corner, I yelled, "Gun, he has a gun. Someone help." He was chasing me, and I knew this was about to be the biggest mistake of my life. I was almost there yelling, "Help me, he's gonna shoot." But he was right behind me. I watched him turn and raise his gun, aimed right at me. I yelled, "Please no." And just as he walked towards me, 4 SWAT officers all dove out behind the lockers grabbing him. He pulled the trigger, shooting straight at me. I fell over, and I watched the bullet hit the ground right between my legs as they cuffed him on the ground. They knew his plan the whole time, and I saved my entire school. My mom called me sobbing and asked if my daughter was still alive while we were watching Bluey on the couch. Mom, what are you talking about? Ellie's right next to me. She couldn't stop crying. Turn on the news. Right now. I grabbed the remote and changed the channel, and my whole body went cold. My driver's license photo filled the screen. My full name underneath it, the words Amber Alert in red across the top, and a ticker at the bottom that said, child believed to be in danger. My ex never accepted losing custody. 2 years of court battles, and when the judge ruled in my favor, she screamed in the courtroom that had stolen her daughter. The last thing she said to me was, I will make sure you never see Ellie again. I thought she was just angry. I should have known better. Ellie tugged my sleeve. Daddy, why is your picture on TV? I couldn't answer her. I just stared at my own face on the screen while my daughter sat next to me in her unicorn pajamas, safe and happy and covered in goldfish crumbs. I grabbed the remote and switched it back to Bluey before she could read anything. She wasn't kidnapped, not missing, not in danger. My phone kept buzzing with calls I couldn't answer. My sister, my boss numbers. I didn't recognize. I called 911 with shaking hands and told them my name was on the Amber Alert, that it was false, that I had full legal custody, that my daughter was sitting right next to me and had been with me the entire weekend. The dispatcher told me to stay calm and stay inside because officers were already on their way. I hung up and Ellie was watching me with her head tilted. Daddy, why are you talking so fast? Are you in trouble? I knelt down and tried to smile. Some people are coming to visit. Everything's going to be okay. Then I heard the sirens. Ellie ran to the window and pushed the curtain aside and her face lit up. Daddy, there's police cars. Lots of them. Are they coming to our house? My chest got tight. I walked to the front door and opened it before they could knock. 4 officers stood on my porch with their hands on their holsters, and one of them had his weapon half drawn. Behind me, Bluey was still playing hands where I can see them. Step outside slowly. I stepped onto the porch with my hands raised. The child, where is she? Inside watching TV. She's fine. She's been with me the whole sir. We need to verify that. Do not move. One of the officers walked past me and disappeared into my house while I stood frozen on my own porch with my hands in the air. I could hear Ellie's voice from the living room. Hi, are you here to visit my daddy? Then I heard her footsteps coming toward the door. Daddy, why are you standing like that outside? She was clutching her stuffed elephant by the ear and squinting at all the flashing lights. Daddy, why do the police have guns? Did we do something bad? Every officer on my porch went still. The lead cop looked at her, then down at his phone, then back at her again. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She wasn't being held against her will. She was a 4-year-old in unicorn pajamas, wondering why grown-ups with guns were standing outside her house. No, sweetheart, I said Daddy didn't do anything bad. These nice people just got some wrong information. The cop studied my face for a long moment, then looked back at Ellie. She waved at him. He didn't wave back, but something in his expression softened. Dispatch, cancel the Amber Alert. Child is safe. False report. He turned to me. You can put your hands down. Ellie tugged my shirt. Daddy, can we finish Bluey now? My ex got arrested 3 days later for filing a false Amber Alert. She's facing up to 2 years. She told me she'd make sure I never saw Ellie again. She was half right. I see Ellie every day. You'll never see her again. My brother was promoted to head surgeon at Dad's retirement party. Then a patient's widow stood up. My brother Michael was everything our surgeon father wanted. Harvard medical degree, perfect surgical record, golf club membership. I went to state medical school and worked at a free clinic treating addicts and homeless patients. At Dad's retirement party from chief of surgery, Michael was getting his position while I sat at table 12 with the janitors. Dad stood at the podium praising Michael's flawless career to 200 guests, including the hospital board. Michael represents the best of medicine, he said. While I knew Michael took bribes from pharmaceutical companies and billed insurance for procedures he never performed, Michael took the microphone and made a toast about carrying on the tradition of excellence, not like some doctors who waste their talents in homeless shelters. Looking directly at me while everyone laughed, he walked past my table, stopped, and said loud enough for others to hear, maybe when you're done playing Mother Teresa with the jumpies, I can find you a position cleaning bedpans. His wife laughed. Their perfect children applauded, and I sat there burning because everyone thought he was perfect when I knew he was a fraud. My own mother said, at least one of my sons made something of himself, looking directly at me. Michael was getting his 3rd standing ovation when I noticed a woman in black near the back, holding an iPad and staring at Michael with pure hatred. When Michael raised his champagne glass, I saw her mouth the word murderer. Michael was mid-sentence when the woman stood up. My husband wasn't your first patient to die, was he, doctor? The room went silent as she walked forward. 3 years ago, you operated on my husband Druck, Alan Martinez, the construction worker with the routine hernia repair who mysteriously died on your table. I felt my stomach drop. I knew Michael was corrupt, but I had no idea he was a killer. Michael's face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about, ma'am. You need to leave. She held up her iPad. I have the security footage the hospital thought they deleted. She connected it to the presentation screen. Everyone watched Michael stumble into the OR at 2 in the morning. clearly intoxicated, pushing past a nurse who tried to stop it. "That's my husband on the table," she said as Michael scrubbed in while swaying. "The hospital paid me $2 million to stay quiet, but I kept everything. The toxicology report showing your blood alcohol was 0.18. The emails from hospital lawyers coaching me to lie. The falsified death certificate." Dad stood up, face purple with rage. "Tell me she's lying," you demanded. Michael couldn't look at him. "Dad, I can explain. You killed patients? You operated drunk and I promoted you?" His voice broke. "I defended you to everyone, including your brother. There were 2 other families," the widow announced. "We've been planning this for months." 2 more families walked through the doors, one holding a photo of their dead daughter, another of their father. Catherine Walsh died during routine gallbladder surgery. Robert Franklin died during knee replacement. Both operated on by Dr. Michael while intoxicated. The board president stood. "Dr. Michael, your medical license is suspended immediately pending criminal investigation." Security escorted Michael out. His wife grabbed their children and fled. Dad stood there shaking, looking at me for the first time in years, really looking at me. I backed the wrong son. The CEO approached me. "We need someone with integrity to rebuild trust. Will you accept chief of surgery?" I looked at my father's empty chair, then at the room full of people who just watched the golden child fall, and said yes. My teacher shouted out, "Alex isn't your real name. Tell us what it is." But she doesn't understand. I'm in witness protection. "It says here you go by Alex." She looked up at me. "But your legal name is different." I felt ice flood my veins. The marshals had set everything up. New city, new school, new name, new life. They told me the school had been briefed. They told me my records were flagged. They told me I was safe. I asked her to please just call me Alex. She shook her head. "I use legal names in my classroom. None of this nickname nonsense. If your parents wanted you to be called Alex, they would have named you Alex." My parents were dead, killed by the people I testified against, shot in our driveway while I hid in the closet and listened. That's why I was here. That's why I was Alex. That's why I could never be who I used to be ever again. I tried again. It's really important. I can't explain why, but I need you to trust me. She didn't even look up from her roster. I've been teaching for 22 years. I've heard every excuse. I go by my middle name. My parents call me something different. I'm finding myself. She made air quotes. School is preparation for the real world. In the real world, you use your legal name. A boy in the back row muttered something about it being the first day. Ms. Halverson ignored him. She ran her finger down the attendance sheet until she found my entry. "Your real name is..." I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "Please, don't." She looked at me like I was being dramatic, like I was another teenager trying to make things difficult. She had no idea. She couldn't have any idea. But she also didn't care enough to wonder why I looked like I was about to throw up. She read it anyway. My full legal name. Benedict Rowe Calder. First, middle, last. I know it's a dumb name, but it's the one connected to a federal case that made national news. The one that got my family killed. The one I was never supposed to hear again as long as I lived. 30 students now knew exactly who I was. The room went silent. A few kids were already reaching for their phones. Any one of them could Google me. Any one of them could post it. Any one of them could tell someone who would tell someone who would tell the people still looking for me. 3 years of hiding, gone in 4 seconds. Ms. Halverson smiled like she'd won something. "See, that wasn't so hard. Now, moving on." The classroom door flew open. A man in a dark suit walked in. I'd never seen him before, but I recognized the look. The way he scanned the room. The way his hand stayed near his hip. The way his eyes found me, then found Ms. Halverson, and went cold. He pulled out a badge. "U.S. Marshals." Ms. Halverson's face went white. He walked toward her desk with the kind of calm that's more terrifying than yelling. "That student is under federal witness protection. The name you just read out loud is sealed by court order. You have potentially compromised an active federal investigation and endangered the life of a protected witness." Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I didn't know, because you didn't ask." He took the roster from her desk. "There's a flag in the system, bright red. Impossible to miss if you bothered to look. But you didn't look. You just decided you knew better than the federal government about what name to use for a 16-year-old kid." He turned to me. His voice softened, but his eyes didn't. "Get your things. We need to move. Now." I grabbed my backpack. I hadn't even unpacked it yet. I walked toward the door without looking at anyone. A girl in the front row whispered, "I'm sorry," as I passed. I didn't answer. I couldn't. In the hallway, the marshal was already on his phone. "We have a breach. Full relocation protocol. Yes, today. Right now." I followed him to a black SUV parked in the fire lane. A woman I'd never met was in the driver's seat with the engine running. I got in the back. The marshal got in beside me. The car started moving before my door was fully closed. "New documents will be ready by tonight," he said. "New city by tomorrow. New school by Monday." I nodded. I'd done this before. I'd do it again. He looked at me. "I'm sorry. This shouldn't have happened. You can thank your blockhead of a teacher. I never thought I'd see attempted murder at my school until I got put on lunch duty. Every single day I watched this tiny kid walk up and ask, 'Does this have gluten? Is this dairy-free?' But every day the lunch ladies would get annoyed saying, 'You'll be fine, kid. Just eat it.' But I need to know. I could get hurt." And they'd shove a tray at him and move on to the next student. I stood closer the next lunch, but I overheard them saying, "Oh look, here comes Allergy Boy again." They laughed at them. "Maybe we should just give him dairy today and see what happens." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but they smiled while they handed him his food. Then he took his first bite, and not even 20 seconds later, he dropped his fork and started running out of the cafeteria with his hands on his stomach. Everyone watched him and laughed, especially the lunch ladies. "Did you see him choking though? This was pure evil." I immediately walked to the principal's office to tell him to fire them, but as soon as I finished telling him what I saw, he goes, "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof?" He called them in, and as soon as he asked them, one of them put her hand on her chest and said, "What? We try so hard. It was an honest mistake." The principal turned to me. "See, it's just a misunderstanding. Perhaps you should focus on your own classroom." I left that office furious, but I made a promise to myself. This wasn't happening again. The next day, I positioned myself right next to the lunch line when he walked in. "Hey there, we're so sorry about yesterday, so we made you something completely safe today. We promise." They were performing for the whole cafeteria. We made Thai noodles with our special sauce, totally safe. He thanked them and took his tray, and that's when it hit me. What was he even allergic to? So I quickly walked to the nurse's office to find his folder, and when I looked at it, I felt terrible. He was allergic to almost 25 things. No wonder he was so skinny. But then at the bottom it said, "Fatal peanuts." Wait a second, they said Thai sauce. Thai sauce had peanuts in it. Then it hit me. They were trying to kill him. I instantly grabbed the EpiPen from the wall and ran to the cafeteria. But when I burst through the cafeteria doors, I saw a crowd of kids standing in a circle around one of the tables. Someone was screaming, "He can't breathe! Somebody help! Where's the EpiPen?" "There's no EpiPen! There isn't one in here!" But I had one. I dropped to my knees beside him and uncapped the pen. His throat had completely closed. I didn't know how long he'd gone without air. I jammed the EpiPen into his thigh and held it there, counting the seconds. But he wasn't breathing. A girl was yelling, "Please save his life." But it should have worked by now. It was too late, and I looked at those lunch ladies. "He told us he wanted it today." They were lying. I snapped, "You killed him. Prove it." But the girl was pointing to him. "Wait, you killed him, and now he can't expose you." I was about to grab her by the throat until I heard wheezing. I froze and saw him gasp back to life. And since he could now definitely tell the police what they did, they now stand in line for their prison lunch. An entitled girl parked in my driveway and said it wasn't her problem, so I turned her into my prisoner. I came home from work Friday night exhausted and ready to collapse, only to find a BMW crammed up against my garage door. My driveway is this narrow concrete cage between stone walls, and once you're in and I park behind you, you're not leaving until I say so. This happens all the time when you live in a college town. So I just pulled up right behind her and went inside. Then around 10 p.m., someone pounded on my door. I opened it to find a girl in a crop top, phone in one hand. "Move your car, now." She was breathing hard, her face already red. No apology, no greeting, just a demand. I pointed at the BMW wedged against my garage. "You're parked in my driveway." She actually rolled her eyes and threw her free hand up in the air. "I don't care. I need to leave." "But you parked on my property." She snapped her fingers right in front of my face. Actually snapped them twice, like I was her personal valet. "Just move it." I just smiled and told her, "Nah, I'm in for the night. I'll move it in the morning." Her mouth dropped open, and her face twisted into this disgusted expression like I just spit on her shoes. "That's not my problem, Boomer." Those words flipped a switch in my brain. I watched her storm off, her phone already at her ear, one arm waving around as she yelled at whoever answered. Then the red and blue lights flashed down the street, and as I watched the cop car pull up, an idea hit me. I grabbed a beer from my fridge, cracked it open, and walked out to meet the officer, taking a long sip as I approached. The tired-looking cop glanced between me with my beer and the girl who was now pacing back and forth in my driveway. "What's the situation here?" he asked. I explained calmly. "She parked in my private driveway without permission. I parked behind her when I got home, and now I've been drinking, so I can't legally move my car." I took another sip for emphasis. The officer took one look at the narrow driveway and the stone walls. He turned to the girl. "Ma'am, you parked on private property. I can't ask him to drive under the influence." "But I'm trapped." Her arms shot up over her head. "You shouldn't have parked on someone else's property." Then he walked back to his patrol car. I couldn't believe that actually worked. I looked past the cop at the girl standing there with her arms still in the air and gave her the biggest smile I could manage. Then I pulled out my phone and glanced at the calendar. Labor Day weekend. 3 beautiful days stretching ahead. I walked back outside and told her I'd be drinking all weekend since it was a holiday, but she could get her car Tuesday when I went back to work. The shriek that came out of her mouth probably woke dogs 3 blocks away. "I have classes Tuesday." I just shrugged and threw her own words back at her. "That's not my problem." She kept spam calling the cops all weekend until they finally stopped showing up. Then Tuesday morning came. I looked out my window, and there she was, sitting on my front steps, slumped over in wrinkled clothes, her hair a mess, looking like she'd been there all night. I grabbed my work bag and walked out in my suit. Her head shot up the second she heard my door open. She stood up so fast she almost tripped. Her eyes locked on me like I was her salvation. I walked right past her toward my car in the driveway. Then my Uber pulled up to the curb. "I have a headache from all that drinking," I said with a shrug, and climbed into the back seat. As we started to pull away, I turned around to look through the rear window and watched the hope drain completely from her face. Her shoulders dropped and her whole body just deflated right there on my front steps. Eventually, I let her have it back. My driveway stayed empty after that. When my mom found out she was pregnant with me, my dad suddenly disappeared while she was sleeping that night. He left her with all the bills to pay, and now a child to take care of by herself in New York. She was really stressed, and as a last resort, applied for a random job downtown. This would have made her a lot of money, and when they asked her for an interview, she knew this was literally her only chance. She went to bed early, but for some reason, the power went out in our building that night. She woke up really late the next morning and started trying to rush to the train station. She sprinted down there while pregnant and literally missed the train by a few seconds. She panicked and called to ask if she could come later, but they just told her if she couldn't show up on time, they'd never hire a lazy slob like her. She was so stressed out, she just went home and cried before falling asleep. But 4 hours later, she woke up to someone pounding on her door and opened it to see my aunt crying her eyes out. She instantly hugged Mom and was so worried because she wasn't answering her phone. "I thought you were dead." Since the power went out in our building that morning, my mom was late for her interview that day, and she wasn't in the tower when the planes hit. I'm an ER doctor, and I watched a woman rush in with a little boy, his head badly injured. She said he was her nephew and was running outside when he fell, so I immediately took him back to get care. But as soon as I finished stitching him up, I asked her how this happened. This time, however, she told me he was running through their house when he fell and hit his head on a table. I immediately felt suspicious because she said he was outside last time. I told her to go wait outside, and when the boy woke up, I asked him what happened. And when he told me, I could feel the rage building up inside me. I immediately stormed back out to the woman and couldn't hold back. I immediately yelled at her, asking how she could do that to a child. She started trying to lie, saying she didn't know what I meant. But just then, his parents burst in. "What's going on? Your child spilled juice on her purse and she was so mad she hit him over the head with it. He has a concussion." She tried to deny it, but when we saw her purse, we could still see the red. She started backing up, but it was too late. A mother called 911.
Well, guys, that's it for today. This is gonna be a series. If y'all want to see more, then like and subscribe.